And so the lens I want to give you while we're here in sacred space together is a contrast. Just like the contrast between sacred and profane, the contrast between the narrative of punishment versus transformation. And the quality of the two narratives very much mirrors the quality of the difference between the sacred and the profane. The narrative of punishment is very much a narrative of the profane, right? Where it's basically the narrative of punishment is, right, here comes the finger again, right? Here comes the finger again. You idiot, you numbskull, you dummy, you greedy person. Even if you're like not against the sort of greedy capitalist system, you're complicit because you buy groceries and you make money and, blah, 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 shame on you. You did something wrong. And now you're going to get a whooping, right? I'm going to whoop you. Mother Nature's going to whoop you. God's going to whoop you. And the finger just continues on and on and on. And the instruments that are applied to you are fear, control, and threat. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, or good and bad, or good or bad. I'm saying that is one way for the narrative to go. And it is a narrative characteristic, right, of the profanum. The other kind of narrative, the narrative that is opposite from that, for me is not that, oh, kumbaya, everything's okay, because the reality is it's not, right? The alternate narrative for me is not the narrative of punishment, but rather the narrative of transformation. In other words, the message that we are changing. Something profound is changing. We, humankind, everything is undergoing a profound change. And not that, oh, it's a change for the better, everything's going to be okay. Not all change is good or not painful. Change is often incredibly scary and painful. But the point of the narrative of transformation is that, like it or not, this is happening. This is happening. And when I reflect on the quality of the human life cycle, the thresholds and phases that we go through, when you're a child and you transform into a woman or a man, and then you transform into an elder, all these different systems of like describing the different phases of life, I found that all the major thresholds and transformations of life are like this. All these transformations are involuntary, often terrifying, clouded in uncertainty, and not without pain and risk. Traditional, initiations in traditional cultures, when the boys are brought to basically transform them into men, there is non-zero risk. Not every boy makes it through initiation. The transformation from a girl to a woman, which is cultural but also physical, and the changes that happen to her body. For instance, a girl's first menses, her first period, it's a transformation, right? Where it's like this change in your body is happening, whether you are okay with it or not, whether the society around you is okay with it or not. This is happening. And these narratives around these transformations is the key around, menses, around menopause, around midlife crisis for a man or a woman. The key for me of transformation is guidance, higher guidance that you ideally get from within your own self through your own sacred space within you. Okay, not from an outside authority, not from me certainly, right? But I'm just an assistant helping you with the tools for you to get where you need to be to sort of receive that inner guidance within your own self. Okay, but for me, the key for navigating through transformation is to find the guidance of like, what is the larger pattern of like, what the hell is going on with everything outside, and also what the hell is going on with me? Because as the outside changes, I find myself going through transformation too. Right? From the profane view, it's like, well, I can't buy the same stuff I used to buy, and I can't leave my apartment, and I can't go, drinking the way I used to go to, or whatever. But the point for me is more that these changes trigger transformations within us as well. And I'll say more about that. The key to transformation is guidance. Do you get the guidance of the larger pattern afoot? And then what is the narrative that accompanies that transformation? Is it a profane narrative of punishment, a narrative of fear, threat, and control? Or is it a narrative rooted in the sacred, right? Where the transformation is sort of characterized or framed in the narrative of ideally some degree of love, nurturing, and surrender. The example I always come back to actually is a young woman, a girl's first menses, right? Which is this, because we live in a patriarchy, is this like huge political sort of and cultural hot potato that is like misused by the powers that be to craft and control the narrative of what a girl is and what a woman is. And of course, you have cultures in our world where the narrative around menses, or a girl's first menses, and menstruation in general, as being, it being disgusting, unhygienic, hide it, it's shameful, don't talk about it, right? Or no narrative, right? Oh, no, we just don't talk about it at all. And one day a young girl realizes she's like bleeding from this part of her body and she has no idea what's going on. She's terrified. She thinks she's going to die. Okay. Or is it a narrative of love, nurturing, and surrender, where it's like, hooray, welcome. We've been waiting for this to happen. You have now transformed, right, from a girl into a woman. This is the rising of your goddess power. There is the blood. That's the proof of it, right? Let me explain what menses is. Let me explain where babies come from. This is the wellspring of new life. This is this birthing of this power in you, right? Whether you actually decide to have kids or not, that's your choice. But this birthing of this power in you as a girl in our family is the birthing of a new power in our family, and we celebrate it and we honor you, right? Rising from your girlhood into womanhood, and then later into full matriarchyhood as a sort of, matriarchal leader of our family. The biological changes are no different from one girl to the next. But in each of those two examples, the narrative is completely different. The quality of life path that girl will have going forward, depending on the narrative, whether it's punishment or transformation, whether it's rooted in just the profane or rooted also in the sacred, those two life paths will be completely different. I work with probably 30,000 people at this point, online through programs, helping with healing, finding and following their bliss. I see this every day. The narrative is everything. So for me, I want to give this perspective then on everything happening in the world, at the meta level and also at the personal individual level. I want to give a little bit more detail on seeing what is happening right now through the lens of transformation, not punishment. If you want to see it through the lens of punishment, just read the news. All right, get on Facebook. Everything you hear out there is from the narrative of punishment and the narrative of the profane. And that's fine. There is a place for that. But for the narrative of transformation, I want to give you some frameworks and tools around what transformation looks and feels like, so that you can discern for yourself whether everything happening in the world for you and things happening for you in your own self feel like transformation or not, right? And my point here is that I'm not finger wagging. At the end of this, you're like, okay, that was interesting, but I still actually see it from the lens of punishment, because I think, we've been very, very naughty humans and God is now rightfully punishing us. That's okay. That's okay. But here in the sacred space, it is my role, my privilege, my honor, to be a little bit of kind of an advocate for the perspective from the view of the sacred. Okay. So for transformation, there's three things I want to share with you. The first is, what does the pattern look like from a 30,000 foot level? The second is, how does it actually feel when you're going through transformation? And the third is, what the hell actually happens in a transformation? Like, so what happens before, after? What the hell actually happens? And I'll try to describe that in as concrete terms as I know how. Okay. To give you this thread to follow as you navigate through the storm. So number one, what is the pattern of transformation? The pattern is, for me, best typified by the image of the caterpillar butterfly life cycle. 3 acts, 3 stages. Caterpillar dies, goes into the tomb or coffin of the cocoon, okay? And then rises, that cocoon turns into a womb, a birthing, a cauldron, a seed, an egg, that then gives birth to the butterfly. Now, typically when spiritual people use this metaphor of, caterpillar, butterfly, New Age people, et cetera, a characteristic of, what we call spiritual people is that everything has to be positive. Everything has to be rainbows and unicorns. So when they tell the story of the caterpillar, cocoon, butterfly, they're like, yeah, but isn't it great? Yeah. So the caterpillar's gone. That's okay. We didn't need him anyway. You're going through this thing, but it's all going to be all right because you're going to be this beautiful butterfly in the end. So it's this like almost enforced positivity, almost this enforced positivity in the realm of the profane, where it's this threat, where it's like, you better be positive or else you will not be a good spiritual person. So think positive or else. Don't let any negative thoughts, be mindful, right? Or else. So I'm going to put that away. And when I look at the caterpillar, cocoon, butterfly motif or archetype, is that it's not all for the better, right? This is a transformation. You're a caterpillar. You're eating at 100 miles an hour. You're eating everything in sight. You're starving. You're ravenous. And you're giving in to your impulses and eating, right? Sounds a little bit like the modern sort of capitalist economy, if you ask me, right? And you eat so much that then it triggers a reaction within you where you basically die. Right? That caterpillar, if you were to cut open the chrysalis halfway through, you wouldn't find any caterpillar in there. You just find a bunch of green, purple goo. And you would arrest the process because you've disturbed it. You've released the pressure, right? Which I'll get to in the next point. So this caterpillar dies, is in this belly of the beast, chrysalis, dark moment. And then eventually this butterfly comes up. But if you've ever seen a video of a butterfly coming out of the chrysalis, that looks like an excruciating process too. It doesn't look fun. And then you're a butterfly, you have to sit there vulnerable to anything eating you because you need to let your wings dry in the air. And then you fly off as a butterfly. And even then, that's not a very long life cycle. And even then, the life of butterfly has risk. And so my point is, and even if you love the butterfly, and you're like, we're glad we're the butterfly, the caterpillar still died. You have still suffered a loss. The caterpillar is still no more. I mean, you've got this consolation prize of the butterfly, but the caterpillar and the loss of the caterpillar is still worthy of grief and grieving. So in other words, even though you're the butterfly, you're not free of grief and grieving, and that is okay. That is part of the overall package, the pattern, the channel. And it is basically this feeling of, it's just like menstruation. It's not about whether it's good or bad, whether you like it or you don't like it, whether the culture around you shames you or celebrates you for your first menstruation. It is happening, right? And the more you have insight into the overall pattern that this is a natural part of the feminine life cycle, of the female life cycle, the more you can perhaps take guidance and comfort from that. To know that there's nothing wrong with you, right? And it is painful. You get cramps, and there's nothing wrong with you. Okay. So when we think about transformation, it is this cycle of caterpillar, cocoon, butterfly. You can enforce a forced positive narrative. You can enforce a negative narrative. But the whole thing is every threshold crossing from caterpillar to cocoon, cocoon to butterfly, and butterfly and beyond is painful. It is not voluntary, right? And the eternal question is, if you were a caterpillar, knowing that if you keep eating at this rate, it's going to trigger this transformation, and you're going to go kicking and screaming into this cocoon. Your body is going to melt and disintegrate. And then, we hear these rumors of butterfly afterwards, but who the hell, who wants to fly? I want to just sit around and eat all day. So all this fog of war, you have no idea what's happening next. If, as a caterpillar, you knew in advance everything that would happen, would you stop eating? Right? Would you try to arrest the process and stay a caterpillar? That is the eternal question. Right? That is the eternal question. And there is no right answer. If you stay a caterpillar, you avoid the pain, and then you abort and interrupt the entire cycle. And so you abort and interrupt it. So what? Right? So there's one less butterfly in the world. So for me, I'm not saying you should or shouldn't do anything. I'm simply describing a state of affairs that is so. This is the cycle. These are the pain points. And, if you could decide, if you had any control or foresight, the eternal question would be, do I do this or do I not do this? This is the natural pattern I'm in, but do I try to sort of forcibly arrest it and break it? And it's like Christ in the garden before his crucifixion. He's like, last call, any way I can get out of this, right? And God's like, I could send the devil to whisk you away and not hurt you. And he was just like, screw it. We're doing this. I got this. Let's do this. Right. And not to make this really, I could have used Jonah the whale. I could have used any other sort of mythical image. So the cycle is this. The cycle is terrifying and painful. Do you try to stop it? Yes or no? There is no right answer. Right? When you go into sacred space and you meditate on the cycle that you may be going through at a global level, at a personal level, these are the kinds of questions that come up. When you get guidance, it tends to be around these kinds of issues. No, we like what you're doing. Continue. It's going to be painful as hell. Sorry, we would avoid it if we could, but we need you to go through this shit right now. We can't even tell you why. Because if we told you, you might try to pull the emergency brake. We can't even tell you why. Just keep going, and we'll apologize. Maybe we'll try to make up for it on the other side. Right? This is the kind of guidance you will typically get, and you roll your eyes, and you're like, "Well, that wasn't very helpful." But it's still better than going out into the profane world, where any guidance anybody has is, go out and buy more toilet paper, right? I'm not saying it's not important, but even after you've done that, there are still larger questions that need to be answered. And where are you going to get the guidance from that? Right? You're not going to get it from me, right? The most I can do is give you kind of tips and tricks on how to get it from not even within yourself, but through yourself. So transformation number one, what does the pattern look like? That's what the pattern looks like. Transformation number two, how does it feel? There are two defining characteristics of a transformation: pressure / heat and containment. So it's kind of like braising a tough side of lamb or meat. Okay. You put it into the cooking pot, the Instant Pot, and two things are applied. pressure, the heat, and containment. You have to keep the lid on the pot, or the lid is forcibly kept and you can't escape. Okay. And when the thing is trapped, you, the world, humankind, and heat pressure is applied, and there is an inability to escape, transformation happens. In the sort of typical example, in the cooking example of the meat undergoes breakdown. I mean, it comes out, it's still recognizable, but it's soft, it's fork tender, you don't even need a knife to cut it. And it's very digestible, it's very open, the meat has surrendered, basically. And so when you feel the 1-2 punch of pressure and containment, it's like ding, 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 you're in a transformation, right? So I feel the pressure of, my partner being a jerk, but I don't have containment. I can still go out. I can maybe have other lovers. I can do all this stuff, distract myself, bury myself in work, and then come back and still kind of, sort of carry on a daily basis. That's pressure, but no containment. Not to sort of rub salt in anyone's wound right now, but I'm getting a lot of messages from my advisees going like, I am in lockdown and I am with my partner and I'm with my family. And the usual things I would do to blow off steam when they drive me nuts is I would go out for a walk. I would go out for a smoke. I would go out and shop. I would go drive around. I'd take the weekend off. And I can't do those things right now. Sorry to hit a sore spot. Sorry. And so to me, again, I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's good for you. You should sort of take advantage of this moment and become a better person. I'm not saying any of that shit. I'm saying you got pressure and you've got containment. I'm not saying it's just like your first menses. It's like, if I could wave a magic wand and spare you from this, I would, but this is coming. And I can argue that this is good for you. You're going to be a woman. You're going to be able to have kids. It's just this wonderful thing. That's small comfort for you right now. So I'm not going to say kumbaya, it's all going to be okay. I will say there's a larger pattern. In the meantime, let me just hold you and give you a hot water, take some Advil, give you a hot water bottle and help you through the pain of the cramps and everything else. I can ease the pain, but I can say something about the larger pattern, and I can give you nurturing and love in the meantime. That's about the best I can do. Right? And then we will get through this. I don't know what form, I don't know what butterfly you're going to become at the end of this. But that's, there is a pattern happening. There's pressure and containment. And, you just sit in it. And what happens is you are transformed. Because let's say in that example, when you're with your family, when you're with your partner, and it's like you need to escape, but you can't because you're in the instant pot. You can't escape, right? What will happen is things will melt. Things will soften. The chemical bonds between you will change, just like the chemical bonds in meat, between the meat and the fat do change. They start to, I don't want to sort of pull this metaphor to absurd extremes, right? But basically, chemical bonds break and are reformed in a different configuration. And I'm not saying, oh, it's all for the best. I'm saying in many cases, it will suck, right? Shit will break. But if you are feeling pressure and containment, it is a harbinger of transformation, for better or worse. It is not a harbinger or indication of punishment. If you're in that space and you feel pressure and containment, it doesn't mean you're stupid. It doesn't mean you screwed up and the gods are punishing you. I mean, you can subscribe to that. What I'm saying is you have an alternative. Right? And when a girl has her first menses, when a man goes through his midlife It used to be called midlife initiation. Then we lost the narrative. We had no tools to help a 40-something man navigate this next chapter of his life. And we left them all out on their own. And now we don't call it midlife initiation. We call it midlife crisis. And they all flip out. So for me, it is this narrative of not punishment. You're not stupid. You didn't do anything wrong, right? There's none of this. It's like, okay, you're feeling pressure and containment. Let me tell you about this pattern, this caterpillar sort of, cocoon butterfly pattern. I'm not going to tell you what it is or isn't, but it makes me think of this pattern. I'm just going to show you this pattern. And then you decide whether it fits or not. But if you do feel like it fits, then it's like there are certain things, we can kind of figure out. I can tell you what else happens in this pattern, and you can maybe take it as your amulet or totem or lightsaber going forward on your adventure as you go through this cycle of, caterpillar, cocoon, butterfly, Luke Skywalker in the belly of the Death Star to Jedi, right? So that's number two. So number one is, what is the pattern? Number two, what does it friggin' feel like? So pressure and containment. Number three, what actually happens? What actually happens? And without turning this into like a 6-hour kind of session, I just want to share the perspective that when I do healing work with people, when I help people with finding their bliss and blah, 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 all that sort of life path stuff, the main thing I think about in terms of what happens during a transformation, you have pressure, you have containment, you're forced into the cocoon, and then what happens in there? What happens? I know it's painful, I know it's scary. The signal thing for me that happens is that there is a thing within you, a valid part of you that was suppressed, exiled, cut off from you, and buried, hopefully forever. That when the pressure and containment happen, this thing returns to claim its rightful place at the table, by your side, helping you navigate your life path. The part of you that's like, no, that's not me. Good girls don't do that, right? Good men don't think like that. Number three is what actually happens in the containment cooking pot of transformation. And the image is when the concrete starts to crack, under pressure and containment, the concrete starts to crack and the grass starts shooting through the cracks. This buried, literally suppressed, concrete paved over part starts to come back to claim your rightful place, their rightful place at the table. Not as a punishment, not as vengeance, although it will feel like that from the lens of the profane. From the lens of the sacred, it is coming back home to you. It is like the prodigal son finally returning. With the caterpillar, it is the power of flight. Right? I mean, the caterpillar is a ground animal, and the butterfly is a creature of the air. So symbologically, metaphorically, you go from a ground animal to a more spiritual animal. That's why it's like death, and then the soul, butterfly, the risen Christ, et cetera, right? But with the caterpillar, it is the power of flight, the spiritual side. So to transform the caterpillar into a being of the air, I can't just stick wings on the caterpillar. The entire structure of the organism has to change. And when I watch these videos of caterpillar going in and butterfly coming out, it looks pretty freaking painful, if you ask me. Right? If I was a caterpillar and I knew, which is why we don't tell caterpillars that, right? But if I knew, I'd be like, no, that's okay, teacher. I'll just take a 0. Homeschooling is homeschooling an option? I'll just take a 0. I'm okay, not for me. I'll just take the shame and withdraw. So the thing or things that were suppressed in the world at the meta level, and the thing or things that were suppressed in you. The thing or things that were suppressed in you. How's the feed? I'm going to pause a little bit because I'm hearing people are frozen. Can you see me? Okay, so I just did a refresh from my side, so maybe I got to elbow to the front of the line. um, okay, so hopefully it sounds like you can all see me now a little bit better. Being frozen, we're like moving in and out of sacred and profane. Yes, thank you, thank you. Okay, so to finish that last point, what actually happens in the cooking pot when things transform and all these things happen is that things that were suppressed come back. From the profane view, it's like, oh, come back for vengeance, come back for like, anger and sort of punishment. But from the sacred, things that were pressed out come back to take their rightful place. So for instance, and I don't want to go too deep into this rabbit hole, is when you're in that container with your partner and you're stuck and you can't escape, what changes, right? Maybe it was, I'm just making this up. Maybe it was for you the power of your voice, things that you thought but you didn't say to your partner in the past. And it's like, okay, we've had a long marriage and you want to rock the boat. And you push that side of you down. You're like, I'm not going to bring that into this relationship. I'll just shut the hell up and get on with it. Right? Good girls don't say this. Good girls don't rock the boat in a perfectly good marriage, et cetera, et cetera. Now you're in the cooking pot together. And this voice that you have buried and exiled and said, no, we will lose love if I let you out, is saying, pressure and containment, baby. Pressure and containment. I think I can see some cracks in the concrete. Go, come on, this is our time. Let's go. And you literally feel to bursting where with your partner now, you can't go out you can't, do the things you usually do. And stuff starts coming out of your mouth and you have the blowout. And again, as we know, we're all grown-ups here, right? It doesn't mean everything happens okay in the end. You may not be together by the end of this confinement period. And I'm not saying that's good. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm saying this is the nature of transformation. The things that were suppressed come back to take their rightful place at the table, right? Not saying this guy's a jerk, I don't want to be with you anymore, but it's like the things that I have wanted to say, I'm not going to not say anymore, right? I'm going to say them, let the chips fall where they will. And then if, we'll survive, we'll like get through this together, we'll figure it out. Or not, but I'm not going to not speak my truth anymore, right? The grass comes through. During this period, dreams will typically fire up. This is way too short, sort of informal, mixed group to talk about dreams right now, but all of my friends, their dreams are all firing up where they're being chased, home is broken into, you're in a car you can't control, bears and snakes are chasing you, trying to get you a message. And so these things that were suppressed come back to say, here's my card key, right? I'm a valid part of you. My card key unlocks every door in this building. And I'm not staying out anymore. I'm coming home. Not to be emperor, right? But just to take back my rightful seat around the kitchen table to make and cast my vote on our inner sort of board of director decisions on how our life is going to go, right? I will speak my truth and everything around us will adjust to accommodate or not. But I'm not going to speak. I'm not going to not speak my truth anymore. Right? To hell with that. As one of thousands of possible examples. So those are the three things. Number one, the pattern of caterpillar, cocoon, butterfly. Number two, pressure and containment, what it feels like, pressure and containment with no escape. And number three, Gary, can you text me when it's frozen for you? I'll use you as my canary in the coal mine. Yes, frozen. Okay, I'm going to hang on. Okay. Can people see me? Okay. All right. So to recap the three things of transformation. Number one, caterpillar, what is the pattern? Caterpillar, cocoon, butterfly. Number two, what does it feel like? Pressure and containment. Number three, what the hell happens in that cooking pot? It's what I call, in one form, when you actually accept that part of you back and come to some kind of reconciliation with it. Right? You can keep fighting it and pushing, but what I suggest, not this way, but I'm like, what I'll say, what has worked for me often, not always, often, is to come to some kind of reconciliation, détente, right, with this part of you. So what happens when you do that is what I call enactment, right? So it's like, okay, it's coming back. So we figure out what we're going to do. We come up with a compromise plan, and then we roll forward together. And then we continue figuring it out together. So three things, the pattern, what it feels like, and what happens. Transformation. Transformation, not punishment, as the alternative lens through which to craft this narrative. Okay. What is the pattern of transformation? What does it mean for you? Right? What does it mean for the world? My preference and bias is for, to the extent that you want to, you don't have to do this. Again, if you're like 1% sacred, 99% profane, and you're happy with it, carry on, no action needed. Right? There's no shaming or anything. Do what's right for you. But here, the natural question is, so what is the pattern? I mean, the general template is this caterpillar, sort of cocoon, butterfly. But a powerful exercise to do on your own, right, later on, when you're in your own personal, individual sacred spaces, you go into your own sacred space. You're like walking the dog, you're in meditation, you're taking a hot shower, whatever it is you end up doing to get yourself into sacred space, where you feel you're in a zone of love, nurturing, self-nurturing, and surrender. Where it's like in meditation, when I teach meditation, it's like, even if it's a sucky, horrible meditation, continue in it, because you want to surrender to the fact that you're having a crappy meditation. But that's part of the sacred space. I'm like screwing up in meditation, and I'm not going to do this to myself. And then you continue with your meditation. I mean, it turns into a good meditation after you do that, but that's not why you do it, right? You do it because you're not doing this like categorically, de facto, for those 5 minutes. Afterwards, you can still berate yourself, because the profane is still the profane, right? So when you're in sacred space, the question to ask yourself is, in all of this happening to me and around me, what is the transformation I'm being triggered into? And you notice my hands when I'm doing this, right? It's not fear, poking, threat, right? Or control, okay? Or like dismissing you, control. It is love, okay? Two hands, not one. Love, right? Nurturing, right? And surrender, surrender. So you go into sacred space, you're like, okay, I'm going to set everything up so that like nothing is disturbing. I have strong boundaries. I'm keeping my sacred space. And then you surrender. And one example of a question you can ask is, in all of this happening, what transformation am I even being triggered into? I don't know. I have no idea. And in the shower, on your walk, eventually something will hit you and you'll be like, got it. Horrifying, but got it. And thank you. And you will be given the pattern. You're like, God, like Jesus, Mary, Joseph, why this? Why now? Why me? And you know why. You know why. This is part of you that needs to come back. And I mean, it will just be this wrestling match of a struggle. So when you ask for what is the transformation, what you're asking for is the pattern. What is my caterpillar? What is my cocoon? What is my butterfly? Often you have no idea what the butterfly will look like. You have no clue. Your friends might have a clue, but you'll be like, who, me? No, right? One of my best friends years ago, he was the first person to call me a healer. I was a high-tech CEO. I was in the middle of like, running companies. I was advising him, and he was like, no, haha, Artie, you're a healer. And I didn't say anything, but afterwards I was like, what was that? And my butterfly ended up, my caterpillar was high-tech CEO raising, tens of millions of dollars from venture capitalists. My butterfly turned out to be a healer. The hilarious thing is, years after, I told him, you're the first one to call me healer. And he was like, really? I don't even remember that. So what is my caterpillar? What is my cocoon? Clearly, I'm going in the cocoon. The second question you can ask is, relating to this, given this pattern, where do I feel pressure and containment? Right? In what aspect of my life am I being cooked with no escape out of the Instant Pot? Is it with my work? I had a job loss and I don't, I'm not saying these things are good. I'm not saying, oh, it's good for you. I'm like, no, job loss sucks. It's awful. If I could wave a magic wand and get your job back, I would. But I can't. And now that it is what it is, you can frame it with the narrative of punishment. Oh, I'm an idiot. I should have saved more money. I should have done. Okay, that's not invalid. You could do that in the profane. And then when you're in the sacred, you make a different call. Use a different narrative, which is, I'm feeling pressure and containment around my job, around my relationship with my kids, around my health. Where am I being cooked with no escape? In that area you identify. And then you ask again, what is the transformation I'm being triggered into? What part, right? That next question then is, what part of me that currently I don't even acknowledge as being a part of me is now coming back to demand its day in court? With me as judge, jury, and executioner, it knows it's not going to get a fair trial, but at least for once, you will hear me out. Right? I will bring you to your knees and you will hear my case, where I'm not bad, right? I'm not the thing and caused you all this humiliation and loss. And even if so, I'm worth it because I am a valid part of you. Respect me, take me back, defend me. Even in the profanum, I implore that you defend me. Right? And this is, when you're down in the cocoon, it's not, oh, how heroic, you're in there slaying the dragon. You're not slaying the dragon. The dragon is coming back to demand its rightful place by your side, fighting with you, not against you. And the outside world would be, oh my gosh, that's disgusting. How can you let that dragon sit next to you? And normally you would be like, oh, sorry, what dragon? It's not a part of me. In the butterfly mode, post-transformation, somebody says that dragon is disgusting, your answer will be mind your own business. Right? That's the proper answer. So the questions to ask yourself, only if you want, is when you're in sacred space, what is the pattern I'm going, what is the transformation I'm being triggered into? What is my before, during, after? Where do I feel pressure and containment? Where am I being cooked with no escape? So in my relationships with my kids, with my parents, in my relationships with my lover, my friends, my work relationships, et cetera, my health, my finances, where exactly am I being cooked with no escape, where I feel pressure and containment? And given that, what elements are now able, because of the cracks in the concrete, rushing back at me, demanding their day in court? And we'll see some of these in the examples of the questions people have asked. Okay. We all do this. Like, so when I do healing processes and advise people on healing, this is kind of what we do all day long, right? But at a time like this, it's extraordinary, because at a time like this, the pressure and containment is hard enforced. I mean, when I do healing with people, they willingly go down into the cooking pot, because they're like, I don't want to live like this anymore. This is like an absurd state of affairs, and I'm ready to sort of do this work and do healing. I'm like, all right, come on in, we'll see what we can do. Here, this pressure and containment is enforced by external circumstances, and it is happening en masse. It is this, for me, it is this breathtaking, extraordinary thing for me to be sitting here watching the events of the world unfold through my lens of transformation, healing, sacred space, where it's like you're literally watching the foundation stones of society like spontaneously up and start moving around, sliding around the foundations of the temple of all of civilization. And it's not random. I mean, there is a pattern. I mean, I haven't quite been able to discern it, but it's you watch things move, you realize there's a pattern. You may not get it, but you can tell there's a pattern. Okay. When you are in this state of pressure and containment, the reason to ask these questions, what transformation am I being triggered into? What's going on? What area of my life is this happening? And what thing is trying to get back to me? How do I engage it? What does it even want? Right? The thing, just to tell you with relief, is that when the thing comes back to you, it is an intrinsic part of you. Right? It's not the devil. It's not like some demon or whatever. It is a part of you. You may paint it as a demon. You may vilify it, tar and feather it, put a label and a dunce cap on it and call it the demon, but it actually isn't. Right? It is a part of you. If it can tell you stuff in your head, it's inside you. It's a part of you. Right? And as a valid part of you, its interests are fully aligned with you. If you die, it dies. Right? So you can take comfort in the fact that whatever it's trying to do when it comes back to you, it is, at least in its own mind, well-meaning. It's trying to do something that it thinks it will help. So the question is not of malice or intention. The intention is always good. The question is always one of coordination. So you're trying to do this. I think I'm supposed to be doing this. How do we sort of come to like some kind of interim compromise plan? So the purpose of all this is, in one way or another, beg, borrow, or steal your way to the point where you can try to reflect and discern a larger pattern of what the hell is going on in your life. And even in the larger world, but I wouldn't even worry about the larger world. I'm just worried about you with all the pressure, all the areas of pressure and containment that you are experiencing right now, okay? And in the questions, we'll have some live examples that we can speak to. For many people, often it was a path they were already on. I think one of the first questions, I was already on, I was in hospitality. I was on my way to being a healer, and now this thing hit. I lost my job in hospitality, and I think I'm being pushed even more forcefully into the path of being a healer, not in a nice way, in a very painful and scary way, but I mean, all of a sudden, all these paths are closed, and the only path forward is to continue being a healer. So that is the transfer. It's like pushing you further into like your butterfly phase, if you will. That's just my wild ass brainstorm. I'm not saying that is the answer for you. I'm just brainstorming with you. You are the one that will know for sure. I don't know anything. Okay. But when you see the pattern, it is beyond good and bad, right or wrong, whether you like it or not. It's like menses, right, for a girl. It is what is actually happening and being triggered to sort of catalyze, to sort of start. And this is the question I would ask in sacred space when you are alone. Okay. What is the pattern? What is the transformation that I'm being triggered into? What is the pattern? What does it feel like? Well, I kind of know what it feels like. It feels horrible, right? And then what is the thing that's trying to come back to me? Those are the big three. There's a way you can do this and look out at the larger world and ask those same questions. I'm not going to do that here, but I'll leave that to you to do. Basically, what you do for yourself, you can do as a lens for looking at the world as well. I'll leave that for you. If you do have reflections and questions, you can put them in the question section of the next Sacred Space session this Sunday. And for my own comments, that's all I want to say for now. It's mainly just to sort of plant the seed of that idea that, you know, the narrative of what's happening is not necessarily just punishment, but also there's an alternative narrative rooted in the sacred, right? Not in the profane, rooted in the sacred, a narrative of transformation. And some of the detail there I've given you hopefully will help you kind of, you know, do your own reflection when you go into your own sacred space, right? Away from me, away from my influence, away from the influence of other people, under your own sovereign power and control. Questions to ask that I don't know what the answer will be when you ask them, but that's the point, right? I don't have to know. It's not my business to know. It's, you know, when you start to see the pattern of what's happening in the specific areas of your life, it can actually be potentially a source of great comfort. As philosophers, thinkers much more powerful than me through history have said, and I'll just paraphrase, once you understand the larger pattern of something, once you understand the meaning of why something is happening to you, almost anything is bearable. Almost any pain is bearable. I mean, the one thinker, I mean, there are many thinkers that have expressed this, but the one thinker that comes to mind is Viktor Frankl, who said exactly that sentiment about his time, you know, in Auschwitz, right, during World War II. When he found the meaning for what this was happening, and it was beyond all this other stuff, it made his suffering, it made his pain more bearable, the difference between pain and suffering. So these are just thoughts, brainstorms to share, not this is how you should be thinking about anything. This is just sacred space and giving you extra tools to, you know, bring yourself privately when you're under the protection of your own sovereign power into a state of love, nurturing, and surrender. And then when you get the signal that you get, tools for helping to decode, you know, the insights and intuitions that you're getting.